Lucas County Common Police Court Juvenile Division, which is B. Ohio Boss State Opiate and Stimulant Response Support Year Grant, C. Mental Health Recovery Services Bureau Policy Review, 6B. Here to cover for us, 6A.
Turn to your page 7. This is a rather long thing. The Ohio Mass Addiction Program is funding from the state to support the drug courts and common pleas and family court, and then to provide reimbursement for recovery supports and treatment supports for those clients that are enrolled in those programs. So you'll see there's a mix of administrative expenses this money supports to both the Lucas County Common Pleas Courts and Lucas County Juvenile Court for those drug court programs. And then the agencies listed below also get some administrative support. Those numbers are vastly different based on the number of clients that are enrolled in those courts that are getting treatment in those at those specific agencies. So the more clients in drug court that are at a specific agency, the higher the administrative support goes for them. You'll see that the Lucas County Common Pleas Courts handles the reimbursement for recovery supports, while Task of Northwest Ohio facilitates that for the family drug court. And then part of this funding goes to our purchase of service allocation to pay for treatment services for those clients that are enrolled in these drug courts who are uninsured or underinsured and meet our eligibility for treatment services. So to that effect, you'll see a motion on page 7 and the top of page 8 that authorizes, that accepts the funding and authorizes a pool of funds to be made to go to these agencies.
The chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Is there discussion or questions? Hearing none, we could do a roll call.
Mr. Albright,
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Abstain?
Mr. Brown. Dr. Elhai. Yes. Ms. Friedman,
Yes.
Ms. Harding,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza-Locke. Yes. Ms. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Salas.
Yes.
That motion carries. I'm sorry.
Ms. Banks. Yes.
Thank you. We need to go back to the determination of items to be removed from the consent agenda. The items that were other than 6A that was removed. If I could have a motion, please, to accept those items.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, if we could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Salas,
Yes.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Mendoza-Locke,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Howe,
Yes.
Ms. Harding,
Yes.
Ms. Friedman,
Yes.
Dr. Elhai. Yes. Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms. Banks.
Yes.
Mr. Arnold,
Yes.
Mr. Albright.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. We'll move then to the director's report.
Okay, everybody, I do have a fairly lengthy report. I feel like I'm in an echo chamber. So, we'll just get through here. All right, so the first thing that, thank you. The first thing we want to talk about is, while we don't have a date set for our strategic planning session, we are planning to host that session before the end of the calendar year. The RFPs for our strategic planning will close at on September 26th. I believe that at least one of the trustees, is it Katina, are you part of that scoring committee? Yes. Will then sit down and evaluate the proposals, select the candidate, and then we have to time it with a board meeting to request the allocation before we can contract. So I think it's a good time in that December, January timeframe to be doing our strategic planning, considering everything that's going on, some of which I will talk about in my further report. The other thing I wanted you to be aware of is we recently released a request for information for a consultant to help us develop a behavioral health benefits package. We've talked about this from time to time in response to our concerns about dwindling finances, increase in the number of individuals that are seeking treatment services, potential loss of Medicaid expansion group 8, that those folks who may lose that coverage would actually qualify for board level benefits. And so understanding that there is the potential for a strong number of people to come into our behavioral health system on board funds, we simply do not have enough board funding to continue as is. And developing a benefits package and at least being able to have a conversation about what that might look like, understanding that we need to reinforce board priorities, which is also why it's a good reason to have our strategic planning in this timeframe is paramount. Those proposals are due back on October 8th, and we'll evaluate the responses. We are very concerned about getting responses for this RFP because we are seeking a consultant that is a bit of, as Elijah would describe it, a unicorn. Somebody who has behavioral health experience, actuarial experience, understands what Medicaid packages look like in Ohio and nationally. It's not just anybody who can do this work. So if you have any ideas, we would love to hear them because we are sending this out targeted to our contacts. We'd love to extend them to your contacts to national organizations, consultants that we know, the State Department, our state association, and other foundations, just anybody who you think might be of interest or maybe even know somebody who might be able to do this work. Let me know who that might be and I will ship it out to them.
What do we do what happens if we can't identify that unicorn or identify a unicorn that is financially prudent for
Well,
us to?
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to do something, right? I mean, we cannot afford to we can't continue to not address the continuing escalation of treatment-related costs. And so the idea, I think, would be that, we have between board staff developed a very drafty plan. It probably needs a lot more, well, not probably, it needs a lot more actuarial experience behind it, before we would be comfortable saying this is what we should do. We can, we can evaluate what interim measures we could do. There are simple things that we can do that, as I say simple, are simple to us, but are impactful to the providers and certainly impactful for the people that we serve. One of the easiest things to do is simply reduce our eligibility, fiscal eligibility. Take it from 250% of poverty to something lower. We may end up doing that anyway, just because of financing. Remember, we weren't always at 250% of poverty. We were at 300 and 350 at one point. We're down to 250. When I first started, we were at 192. Don't know what the magic of the 192 number was. Why it wasn't 200, but we were at 192. We may consider something like that in the interim. We could look at specific services and say we're only going to pay that service for this amount for that specific population. We have a benefits, eligibility for treatment benefits policy that describes our priority populations that we could target specifically, and then put a smaller package together for people who fall outside of that. It'll probably be a combination of things, but without the professional and the consultant with the actuarial experience and the data, we would be shooting in the dark. Now, that might not be a bad thing if that's all we have at that time, because the longer we go without implementing, the more fiscal emergency will be created. And specifically, we're talking about our core treatment providers who will bear the brunt of this issue. They will bear the brunt in two ways. Let's say, well, more than two ways, I'm sure, but the two that come to mind off the top of my head are, if Medicaid expansion goes away, as I told you before, we have in calendar year 24, we had about 15,000 Lucas County residents that received a behavioral health service and was a member of that Group 8 Medicaid expansion. 42 are to a cost of $60 million. 42 million of that was on the alcohol and drug side. Most of that are not at one of our currently contracted providers. So what we'll see is providers that have benefited from expansion and developed services in communities, they'll start to contract. Workforce will spread out amongst the other agencies again. But it'll take agencies contracted agencies time to ramp up. Of course, they'll run through their purchase of service contracts quickly, which then puts pressure on us to either expand or expand our network of contracted providers. We're already experiencing growth in our purchase of service contracts. So any additional expense, which admittedly would be a priority for this board, considering one of our priorities is access to treatment, would come at the expense of other investments. And we've been spending a lot of time talking about that as well internally. So yeah, this is one step in preparation for, I don't want to call it inevitable, but we do have to take some action regardless and independent of anything that happens on the Medicaid expansion side of things. We just can't continue to fund the growth in treatment expenses as we are currently.
Are you open to getting more than one consultant? I mean, somebody who has this skill and somebody who has this skill?
I think we would take all advice and all, we are not in a position at this point in time to say, no, we need the help and we need the professional support.
May not be looking for just that unicorn, an actuarial person and a Medicaid person.
Looked at public health, school public health, I forget what they're called, at UT or whatever.
We've sent to UT.
I mean, I just feel like.
Big
they have-
school at Michigan and Arbor.
So here's what I would ask, that suggestions, just shoot them over to me, and it would be very helpful if you had a contact, like an email contact that I can send it to. So what I've been trying to do is identify those folks that we know are doing some of this work, and sending it to them by name, as opposed to just a general delivery mailbox or leaving it to fate. Even if it's like the dean of the college or something, we can shoot those things over to them. And Elijah's been using his networks as well, and of course, some of our consultants that we've worked with in the past, we've attempted to use their networks, and the state and our state association, and just a whole host of people. So any ideas would be greatly appreciated.
Are other boards having this problem?
Yes,
So what are they,
no one has done what we're proposing to do right now. That was the first step we tried to do last year, is identify for us a board that has a developed benefits package. Nobody has that. Matter of fact, there's gonna be a great deal of interest in ours if we develop it. Now, people have some guidance, general, that doesn't limit spending. Let's be clear, that's what we're talking about. We're limiting services, we're proposing to limit service and spending so that we can get more people some service versus a few people a lot of service. Yes.
Since I'm new to the board, is there like a concept paper? Because you just threw a whole bunch of variables, which, I kind of gather, but is there like a white paper or anything that kind of is driving the idea?
So,
Here?
The closest I think that we would come to that is the RFI itself. There's usually a justification section in there about what we're trying to do and what we're, and the reason we're doing it.
Okay.
And Elijah, want to expound a little bit on that section, I think?
Well, do we have access to the RFI?
Sure, it's on our website.
Okay, okay. I haven't gone in there. Like I said, I'm new. I'm warming up to the thing here.
Go to our website, lcmhrsb.oh.gov. Main page, scroll down, public notices. It'll pop right up.
So what I understand, the main idea here is there's only so much money. You're trying to provide the service as broad as possible, but, and I'm kind of throwing stuff in here. There are some high cost expenditures from individuals that you have to kind of balance against the other general services, right? By high cost individuals that, in my experience in legal services, they're like 80% of the time expenditure that attorneys spend by 10% of the population. That was like a metric that was like obvious. The other 20%, we never saw them, maybe once in their life.
So I think philosophically, what I would kind of describe this as is attempting to do the least harm.
In light of the loss of
Right,
the
right.
Medicaid.
when you say benefits package, are you talking about like trying to ensure this, or are you talking about a cost containment strategy?
Largely cost containment strategy.
is part of the cost containment strategies shifting financial responsibility to other programs, whether it's the state or federal, if anything is left after we're done here?
It might be, because there are certain things that we do, like cover people who have high deductible plans, pay for, deductibles, pay for people who have Medicare. That, and when I say that, it's all services that those other entities don't cover or pay in full, or, don't pay the rate at Medicare. So there's a few of those, but the reality is that amount, if we just make those changes alone, you're not going to get to where we need to be. And let's be clear, people, if expansion goes away, we don't have enough money to cover everything. People will go without service. Our system will have to reprioritize our resources based on the priorities that you all will have either set now or will set at our next strategic planning session. So those are our guideposts.
Yeah, you need a uniform. Put that together.
So when you
I
first,
second that, by the way.
so when you first started talking about this, you gave several different characteristics the unicorn should have. I just want to be clear on like your top three: behavioral health, Medicaid, Medicare. What are-
Actuarial experience. We also have I think those would be the top three. Understanding Ohio's system would be very beneficial, but I don't know if it's as important as the others. Understanding public health benefits.
Yeah,
In relation to, are we trying to push things to other systems? Other systems are trying to push it to us.
Or how do you leverage their systems to maximize
Well,
the benefit?
It's what we've done already. I mean, we've been doing it for 30 years, 50 years. We've always maximized Medicaid.
Yeah, but for example, I'm thinking, if you're on Medicare, Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D, and depending on the schedule of services, how does that fit into the services of mental health board? So that you're not duplicating services, you're basically leveraging maximum.
Okay, so we already do that. We don't cover any service that is covered by Medicare. Now, we might pay up to the Medicaid rate, so they pay Medicare first, or maybe it's Blue Cross Blue Shield first, and then we pay up to the Medicaid rate. That's within our contracts, so whatever we do also has to consider contract language changes. So there's a lot of those little nuances. For instance, we also cover bad debt.
You cover that?
Yeah, so we cover bad debt, that clients don't pay their copay, we cover that. Now, that's few and far between, don't get hung up on that, because it's a very small amount of money, but those little pools, we may have to reconsider what we do. And remember, what we're trying to do, and we would advise that this is the philosophy, do the least harm
To the agent.
to the individuals that we
Okay,
serve.
So one example that I was just thinking is this, but let's say some folks that cannot afford to pay Part C or D of Medicare that might provide some service, and they don't have the money for the premium because they're on a tight budget. The board says, yeah, it's probably more cost effective to give you the money to pay the premium because we're gonna get more services for you and save the agency a whole bunch of money for that. I don't know if you can do that.
All of that will have to be discussed within the context of it.
Some agencies don't take Medicare.
Some agencies don't take Medicare.
Criminal justice is gonna be a hurting puppy when this goes through.
So, again, the philosophy,
Our community as a whole would be a hurting puppy. I
least harm possible. Cause we can't walk into it thinking no one's gonna get harmed, cause it will be, and it is. Now, obviously, we also have to look at creation of systems and services to support that. When we start to consider cost containment strategies, how do we manage cost containment strategies? Adapting our smart care, our billing platform for that, creating utilization review processes, education and training. There's gonna be considerable amount of effort that will have to go in, and understanding that you just don't snap your finger and then okay, it's working now. I mean, you're talking about a long-term phased in process. Agencies, they can't initiate, just structurally, they can't initiate policy, in a 30-day period. It has to be over a longer period of time to, when you're talking about retraining and limiting and educating folks on what benefits people will be able to get through our guide.
So timing is also gonna be critical along with the whole 120-day notice with contracts with, this.
That's a great observation. The tea leaves are also looking at the federal budget and saying, okay, what's coming down to trigger the dead man switch in the state budget that would kill expansion? The Fed budget, everybody believes that something's going to happen to that, but we don't know exactly what that is and what the timing of that would look like. Phased in, is it our fiscal year 27 or is it fiscal year 28? We know certain things are happening already with like work requirements coming in, I think, in 27, and then biannual recertifications coming in, I think, in 28. But, along with the dead man switch in the state budget, there's also a trigger on how to unwind expansion in Ohio. So there'll be a time frame. It's just, what will that time frame look like? And will behavioral health services be, one of those that will continue as it unwinds, or will it just be a
Drop dead.
drop dead? All that stuff happening right now.
Question. Because I just had a meeting on a client that I'm trying to get SSI. She's an immigrant, she's a US citizen, and I was explaining intuitively what you just said. Hey, there's some changes coming, Medicaid might change, I don't know, but it's clear, reading the tea leaves as an attorney, something's happening here. You probably have the pulse on the thing. But, so she just looked at me like I was from Mars.
Mhm.
Is there a plan? Because you have to tell the population, hey, there's some changes coming, big time.
So,
And-
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Nope.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
We've had that internal discussion on when do we have, when do we sound the alarm, so to speak. There's a faction of our employees that would say we need to start telling people now. The problem is that I don't know what to tell them. And with our population, creating that anxiety level is probably not healthy.
Correct.
When I don't have a response, all I can say for certainty is something's going to happen, and it's probably not positive for our population.
No, that was the same discussion I had with my client. But my presentation, I guess I err on the side of your staff and said, hey, I gotta be honest with you. I have to prepare you. I don't know what's gonna happen, but the best I can do, like it kind of goes to, is get you an SSI, because SSI Medicaid, I don't think it's going anywhere. But the other side of Medicaid, probably gonna be, and she's on the other side of Ohio Medicaid, you know, which is in danger. So, yeah, that's a hard one.
I would think we would wanna discuss that thoroughly before
Oh,
we
yeah.
start, you know, saying one if by night, two if by sea kind of stuff and scaring.
Well, in conversations like this, let's remember, this is a public meeting. This is
Right.
being streamed to at least 10 people on the other end of the camera. And it will get at least tens of views before the end of next week. So they're, you know, all the agencies are following this. This isn't news to the people that are working in this system. What will be news is once we make a decision on where we go and how we do it, that will be the news.
I'm not so sure people always listen when you tell them.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, but I think that, you know, we've been talking about this for a while. That's
Absolutely.
why we ran the levy and why we asked for an increase, and we knew that even asking for the increase was not going to prevent us from being in this situation. So we've been with this for a long time, and it's been heavy, I think, on some of us that have been serving on the board for a while. It's been heavy on our hearts. You know, what is our next step? What is the next move? And I think our approach has been very methodical and very thoughtful, and I'm praying for a unicorn.
Or a miracle.
One of the two.
I think erring on not giving information that you don't really have when you don't really have information is keeping in with doing the least amount of harm. Because I can remember a day when all of a sudden the checks didn't come one day because there was some kerfuffle and people thought benefits were ending, and the behavioral and the anxiety
Oh.
that happened in that day or so. And we don't know what we don't know. All we know is that as a board, we're preparing as best we can, which is why part of the strategic planning is so important. And sounding alarm when you don't know what the true emergency is might be a little reckless.
So I'm gonna move the conversation to maybe a companion to this discussion. Recently, last week, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, released new guiding principles. Strategic priorities. To many people, they appear to de-emphasize equity, housing first, promoting resiliency in children, youth, and families, and workforce development.
What was the first one?
Equity. That was the first one. De-emphasizing those items. You can find conversations, you know, on both sides. No, it's just a restructuring, and it's the. I think the signal is change is coming with their guiding, with their guiding principles, assuming funding follows principles. The conversation about, okay, if those are being de-emphasized, what is being emphasized?
Right.
Turns to focusing on serious mental illness as its own strategy before it was embedded in some of those things. Helping people achieve long-term sobriety and recovery. We're all for that, right? How that plays out through a series of policy decisions and policy guidance, and then subsequent funding is questionable. I think the initial concern right now, and by the way, I hope to have this conversation, in a better, just informative session during our strategic planning session for us to consider. But one of the big concerns is that, if there is a shift in housing first, that would be pretty detrimental to our community as we have worked really hard, led by this board, by the way, to initiate one of the first housing first, true housing first models in Lucas County. And focus back on emergency shelter and transitional housing. And I mean, those things are needed and they're necessary and there's always gonna be a place for those. But to dismantle one for the advantage of the other will be troublesome in our community. Especially as you start to think about our continuum of care for housing, and it is built on a housing first model. So there are some concerns. And so obviously we're gonna have to have more conversation about what these things look like within the context of impact for our community and for us. We already know that if these changes occur and when these changes occur, there will be more pressure on us to fill the void. That funding that may not be available because people still need housing. People that are housed in that housing are our population, mental, individuals with mental illness and individuals with substance use disorders. And again, we have identified housing for individuals with mental health disorders as one of our priorities. So we put that in the context of all these other things that are going on. And while we don't really get money directly from SAMHSA, we do get federal block grant dollars. Those spin-off organizations of SAMHSA do grant making and our agencies, and we benefit from that. And so we have a lot to kind of unpack, and since this just came out and, there's a lot of reaction to these strategic priorities right now, I think the dust needs to settle a little bit and, the scholars are already kind of moving one way or another and you're finding different arguments on each side. But by and large, it's a concern.
Do we think the dust will have settled adequately for us to have meaningful strategic planning in 3 months?
I don't know. I don't know. It really depends on the signals we get coming out of the budget cycle. They have a fiscal year budget, federal fiscal year budget that they have to settle. It's likely just to be simple, say simple, but it's a continuation versus a new budget. And if it's a continuation, then these strategies aren't really impacted because it's a continuation of what you're currently doing. In the background, though, the concern is what they call these pocket rescissions, which they just simply don't send the money out knowing that the strategies are going to change. So they don't take action in this thing, even though it's in the budget, they just sit on it because they know they're not going to do anything with it. And so there's a whole swirling mess around that you could spend days trying to figure it out.
If anybody wants to read it, just Google SAMHSA strategic priorities, executive summary. It's nothing that would surprise you. It's, all money goes to true Americans and gender identity and so it's not a surprise because it's trickling down.
Have any proposed regulations been published?
No, not that I've read, not that I've seen. Jeffrey, I think you're right, though. I think you're right that, while there hasn't been any proposed related to this, it is a trickle down and those regulations have been coming that have, changed things like individuals that are undocumented can't get X or Y. Things like that are coming out. You can't do gender affirming care, you can't do those kinds of things. All that's packaged in here as well.
I was gonna say, this doesn't seem like a surprise, so if you're gonna say, are we gonna know enough in a few months? I think it's a continuation of things they've done in other areas of the federal government. It's very consistent, it seems to me. SAMHSA's taken down other things related. It's just very consistent, I guess I'd say, so I would.
So we have a good sense of where it's more likely to be
Feel.
headed, a feel.
Just a simple
Okay.
word.
And so
I'm with you.
I don't wanna dwell on it, but as a highlight, we've had our first pushback, serious pushback on contract language related to equity and inclusion in one of our MOAs from a potential provider that gets a substantial amount of federal dollars. So, we need to also within the strategic planning conversation, deal with those kinds of conversations as well, because and again, I don't want to dwell on it, this is a public meeting, I don't want to get too involved in that conversation, but I just highlight that as other people are feeling it. Other entities are feeling it and are afraid. We might not be afraid, but others are.
So it sort of sounds to me like this strategic planning session may be very different from any that I have been a part of, either with this board or any other board. I see.
Because we'll be addressing
I think
Some
federal issues,
right.
which usually are not, they impact us, but at the same time, we have
Right.
some autonomy. But in
And
this
some
case,
that
we
may
don't.
be sensitive and, difficult conversations for a lot of people.
Yes, and I think conceptually, we always go into this with what we hope to do, what we want to do, what does our investments look like? And we may have to consider how do we hurt the least amount of people? And that is a whole different conversation. And probably, by the way, we probably want to do a bit of a training to get that mindset clarified before we even get to the strategic planning session, so that there's some understanding of what we mean by that. Okay, so those were the downers. That's just the reality of what we're dealing with. I do have several other things that are more upbeat. Hopefully you've seen or you will see that the One Ohio Recovery Foundation Region 4 Board is seeking input from the community to help establish our regional priorities for opioid settlement dollars. There is a QR code right there. You can scan it and take the survey. Working with Matt Bell, who is the chair of Region 4, to create a survey. We put it out into the community. Board staff are supporting the data collection, development of the survey and data collection. But we really need everybody's help to get this out. We would love to see more response because on the heels of that, the big news is that in January, it's very likely that the portal will open for the next round of One Ohio Foundation funding from the state. I would expect Region 4 to get somewhere around $2 million, plus it has carryover from last round of about 300,000, so about 2.3 to 2.4 million that would be available for the next round. I would encourage folks to visit the oneohiofoundation.com and sign up for the updates, because that is the best way of keeping informed on how that money is flowing and the timelines and everything associated with that. They do a really good job of communicating to the community. If you wait for somebody like me to send it out, you might end up getting it a week or so later. You can get it in real time when it comes out. So I would encourage you to do that. So that's good news. Next, we have done quite a bit of work in the community over the last several months. We are in the process of hosting a few town hall meetings. We held our first one at the Warner Center last week. It focused on mental health treatment, crisis, and resources. There were 43 people in attendance. Good response. We're doing a survey and accompanying with them too. We're doing an educational piece, having a panel discussion, and then questions and conversation in the community. Our next session is next Monday at the Kent Branch Library, 5 p.m. The topic of this conversation will be recovery. And there'll be a whole host of questions that we'll be asking panelists and then engaging the community members that are in attendance to attend that. We have a flyer. There's a flyer somewhere around. I'll make sure that the board members get it as well. But you know, this and all the information that we collect from all of our events always kind of gets funneled up into the conversation around where are gaps in services, what else do we need to be thinking about, what is the tone and tenor of our system, and of course feeding it back into the strategic planning process as well. We held our Recovery is Beautiful Festival on the grounds of Friendship Baptist Church on September 6th. I did want to give a thank you to all the agencies that lent staff to be on the planning committee. This was a multi-organizational effort. Most of our agencies, contract agencies, and some non-contract agencies are involved in the Recovery is Beautiful Recovery Festival. The grounds that we had at Friendship worked out really well. We had a nice area to work with, the parking lot and the grass area next to the church. There were best estimate of about 300 people there for a lot more families than we're used to seeing, which was great. So we're engaged, and it was a whole different population. So we're happy with that outcome. And you know, just if you haven't been to one, please make an effort to get to our next year's event. This is not a resource fair. While there is information there, this is more a festival of celebrating recovery, helping families celebrate in a sober environment. There's a couple different bounce houses, there's face painting, there's, I don't know, there was all kind of stuff going on. We bring in food trucks, we have ice cream, and I think we had funnel cakes and something else, and, you know, festival food versus, you know, right. And it went over very well, and we had really, all the staff were there. And, you know, a lot of volunteers, and it worked out really well. Some other things that were going on, we've hosted, we have a relationship with the Walleye and the Mudheads. You probably remember we hosted a couple mental health nights at the Walleye games over the last fall and winter. We held we had three games that we were at with the Mud Hens. May is mental health night during May. We had a big event. But last weekend, Friday night's game and Sunday's game, we had a resource table at both of those games. When we were there, we handed out 500 bags of promotional materials, many of which you see over there, which is why we put them over there. We use this, and I've been to the games. I haven't been to the Mud Hens games, but the Walleye games. There is a great deal of conversation and engagement that occurs with a population that we don't normally come in contact with at those events. And the number of people that come up and start just talking about, these lantern flies, and then start talking about a family member who has X, Y, and Z, and then where might they be able to get some help for it? That is a regular and routine occurrence at these things. And it often then translates into, okay, now I have a better understanding of what you're doing and how you do it. And, the next time you're on the ballot, I'm gonna vote for you. And so we're seeing a great deal of response out of those items. And our community engagement staff is doing great work around that. On the tail end of that, or not to be on the tail end, right in the middle of the strategy, if you remember, we wanted to do more mental health first aid trainings out of our last strategic planning. We have held 12 mental health first aid trainings since July.
Whoa.
10 have been adults, 2 for youth. Participants included staff from the City of Toledo Code Compliance, Department of Public Utilities, Lourdes University, resident advisors, Cherry Street Mission, St. Paul's Community Center, Board of Developmental Disabilities, Toledo Fire and Rescue, and upcoming trainings with NPI, Mom's House, Toledo Metro Psych at Mercy Health, and Boss Business Beauties. We did some trainings with the building trades as well. And just a number of different, we're trying to, I think, was it Owens Corning or OI that we did some trainings with as well? So reaching into the private sector as well, which was a part of our strategy and strategic planning efforts as well. So kudos to the staff. Latrice is our coordinator, and Robert Kasperzak, who you all know and love, is right there along with Tina Layson and Michael, and I think even some of our program staff are facilitators of that. So we're doing quite a bit of work on that. And since we're riding the community engagement gravy train, we just concluded a peer recovery supporter training. We held that last week. 25 registrants, 17 peers successfully completed the 40-hour training at Zeph's Recovery House. And during that week, the peer job board, if you remember that we helped develop through Werner Center last year, that's housed at the Werner Center, was introduced as a resource for employment opportunities. So there is, these things that are connecting. And then, not to be outdone, Latrice is holding a crisis intervention team training, CIT training. It's one of the board's signature events. We do at least, how many, Latrice? 4 a year. Next week, we have 22 officers registered from TPD, the Sheriff's Office, Holland Police, Maumee Police, Lucas County Common Police Court, Department of Rehab and Correction. And if anybody wants to visit CIT and see something happen, just shoot me an email and we can connect you with Latrice and she can make you connected. Where is it? There you go, right down the street. Talk to Latrice. And so, yeah, there's quite a bit of work going on in the community, and it all translates into support. And there they're all doing good work. So that concludes my
Great job.
director's report.
Yeah.
They're doing it.
Applause to you, all the work.
These guys, not me, those guys.
Yeah.
You have an update on Danny's place?
I do have an update on Danny's place. We are working through the punch list, negotiating both lease and operational with Unison Health. County Risk Management and the Lucas County Prosecutor's Office is involved in our lease discussions right now. And we're just methodically working through, you know, all the items that that we know that need to be identified to make it a good lease and complement the operational contract. We've also identified some additional punch list items that need to be addressed, and we're continuing to work with Lathrop on those items. We've had to order a few more things that we didn't think about, but once Unison got in and said, no, you probably want to do this and this and this. So they have some additional expenses that we're currently getting bids on. Keypads, fobs. We might need to rearrange some of the rooms a little bit differently for storage purposes. Some cameras, the irrigation system is back on the table. There's a few things. All will be done within the context of our existing revenue. We will not be overspending what we currently have. So I am not looking to go out and have to identify additional revenue sources at this point. So we will stay within the current budget. So at this point, you know, I mean, obviously, I have to come back to the board in order to get an operational contract. I don't have to come back for the lease because you've already given me approval to negotiate that. But operation will be an allocation, so that would have to come back to the board. I'm betting January. They are working on setting up the facility. They're also at the end of mid next week, they have a pre-walkthrough with Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services to identify any things that might catch them up on getting the place certified. So things continue to work.
Exciting.
Any other questions for Scott? Not, we'll move to open session. Yes, Richard?
Brief. I saw in legal notice section of the Blade on Sunday that TARDA is getting ready to change their schedules. After 6 p.m., they'll go from a lineup every 30 minutes to a lineup every 90 minutes. That is definitely going to have an impact on elderly, disabled, low income. Nobody at Government Center knows anything about it. I've been asking around. I'll try and find out more about that. Don't know the reason for it, but it's certainly not financial because they no longer receive county property taxes. They now receive a sales tax. So I'll find out more in a second. This morning, county commissioners met. They did approve their contract with Aramac for meals at the jail. They'll go up a dime from $268 to $278 per meal. They advertise for application for domestic violence shelter providers. In case you're wondering, for every marriage license in Lucas County, $17 of that fee goes to domestic violence. And for every annulment or divorce or dissolution, $32 of that fee goes into domestic violence. And attended a meeting of the, what do we call it, Child Protection Task Force, whatever it is, last month, and saw something I've never seen before. They go into subcommittees, one on each side of the room. Well, the one on this side of the room was yelling and shouting and making so much noise that the other side of the room said, we can't hear ourselves think. So someone came up with the idea, can we use the electronic divider that closes the room? And I pointed out to him, if you do that, I'm not sure you're going to be in compliance with Ohio open meetings law. There was someone from the Toledo Channel 11 there, so they didn't argue. I said, you might want to get an opinion on that. I did talk to John Burrell. He's the guy at the prosecutors that tells the county commissioners how much they can get away with. He said as long as the public can get to both of those rooms, then it's okay to do that. It is a public meeting. There is a proposed group home. It's actually mentioned in Toledo City Journal. It would be at 835 Belmont. It's on hold. There are several other group homes around there. There would be spacing requirements. They would need to get waivers from city council, and some city council members are on record saying we're not going to give any more of those waivers. So it's on hold for right now. It might be on the October the Plan Commission, and it might be on the November. It would be for at-risk youth. It doesn't say how many beds, but it's definitely needed. Set through a grueling Plan Commission last week. The facility for development of the disabled at Deer Park Court, that's going to be job training and socialization. That was approved. The library on the grounds that used to be the old receiving building for the state hospital, that was approved. There were some people there that said, you've got this small library on this huge amount of land. You're not going to sell that to a car wash, are you? And they're on record saying no. They'll do something with it, but they won't sell it to anybody. The 3952 Jackman, they approved a used car lot. The applicant is Devontae Williams. That's the same guy who is trying to turn the old rescue building into a 52-bed psychiatric hospital. It was approved, so he wants to run a 52-bed psychiatric hospital and a used car lot at the same time. He's an ambitious guy. That was approved. What took up an hour and 20 minutes was this whole Westgate redevelopment. The group is called Westgate North. They have proposed tenants who are not going to sign a contract until City Council and Plan Commission has gone on record. What are you going to ask for us to do? And if at some point they're unhappy, they will leave and they will take their money with them. So it was an hour and 20 minutes of, well, our tenants want this, but the Plan Commission wants this. And they went around and around. They're going to lose a lot of parking spaces. And they went around and around on how many trees were they going to be, how many signs were they going to be. And it finally, after an hour and 20 minutes, passed. Now it goes to the October Zoning and Planning Committee of City Council, where the 12 city council members may have a lot more surprises in store for them. So it's badly needed. They pay lots of taxes. So we'll see what happens with that. You just passed your prohibitions against use of hazardous procedures. Okay. Indulge me for a few minutes here. Trust me when I tell you I'm making a long story short, Tori, and I do have documentation of what I'm saying. 39 years ago, I was a client at what was then the East Center. Today, it's the East Office of Unison. My therapist said, I want to try professional supervision. I said, what's that? I said, well, some people will observe. Okay. The only question I could think of was, they used to bring BGSU students in to observe the day treatment. I said, is it like that? Yeah, it's like that. So, okay, I'm not stupid. I know that most mental health professionals like to use long-winded, jargon-filled explanations for everything. If they answer questions in a short, vague, bad idea. So what it turned out to be was paradoxical therapy. They put you in a room. You are facing a two-way mirror with people on the other side that you can't see. You have a telephone in front of you. Behind you, you have staff members. They shout questions at you. You know, like, what books have you read? But the questions are not important. Is that 2 seconds into your answer, the phone rings, and you have to answer another question. After you answer it, 2 seconds later, and then they started coming in from the other room, and they would lay on the floor on either side and start rolling back and forth. This is all meant to be disorienting. What really hurt the most, though, was as the two doors were open, I could hear them on the other side. They were laughing hysterically. I don't mean giggling or chuckling. No, I mean laughing hysterically. So I contacted ABLE. They were a tremendous help to me. And so we got them on record saying, in the future, if we do this again, we will get an informed consent policy and you have to sign it. But I knew I was in trouble. Shortly after that, East Center terminated my case, but not before they changed my diagnosis and didn't tell me. The only way I found out was ABLE allowed me to get my records. They changed my diagnosis to borderline personality disorder. If you're not familiar with that, it is highly controversial. They even have a phrase. It's called being kicked to the curb. That's what I was. I was kicked to the curb with a borderline diagnosis. After that, I'm making a long story short, the only place that I could get services from was Court Diagnostic and Treatment Center. If you don't know, they do court order evaluations, but they don't do individual treatment. They made an exception in my case because I was just in an emotional wreck. I had to go back on medication. It would just completely destroyed my life. It's not a fun place to get services. You sit in the waiting room with guys that are wearing handcuffs and leg shackles and escorted by 2 sheriff's deputies. But it was, if you've been kicked to the curb, it was my only option. Here I am, 39 years later. I still have flashbacks. Just 2 months ago, I attended a city council housing committee. I'm ready for a very long committee with a public testimony on public grant dollars. What I didn't know was they had trouble with the audio video system. There was a 25-minute delay, during which it turned into a social event. All around me, I've got people laughing and joking and hugging, and I had another flashback. I still have them after 39 years. I have panic attacks so severe they can put me in a hospital. I have to be very careful. I had to leave the meeting after 45 minutes because I just couldn't breathe. I just couldn't concentrate. So I'm still paying a price for speaking up 39 years ago. So I see here you've pretty much eliminated informed consent. Now, this electroconvulsive therapy, which you will now pay for, that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I've known people with ECT that have used ECT and they suffered side effects for years. I would like you to bring that back, the informed consent policy. I said it 39 years ago, and I'm saying it again today. It's best for the client, it's best for the agency, it's best for the taxpayers. The client should have these procedures explained to them. And if they sign a document saying, yes, I understand, then at a later date, if they say, I'm unhappy, so I'm going to hire a lawyer, I'm going to sue the pants off that agency, they do have in their possession a signed document saying that you understood this. And it's best for the taxpayers because I made a determined 39 years ago, I'm going to speak out on this. The taxpayers should not have to pay for absurd, ridiculous, destructive therapies. So thank you for listening.